Hi guys, another Australian Grand Prix and a wonderful race like I said in our early video, but these are the analyses, and to break the analysis down I'll have to give you so many things that happened during the race, before the race and after the race, so you can understand a lot of things that went all through the race. But first, let me quickly chip it in. Zak Brown, the McLaren boss, has extended his signature with McLaren until 2030. That makes Zak Brown the CEO of McLaren until 2030, and that's good news for him. And with Andre Stella working along his side as the team principal, they've been doing a terrific job in McLaren this season. The middle of the season last year, they've been doing a very good job, and they've tried their best to make sure McLaren has been competitive, and they've been coming up to the game and doing their bit. If you look at them now, McLaren are the third best team in F1 presently, while we'll have Red Bull and Ferrari now neck on neck. We don't know which is best, but the next few races will tell us how those teams are faring. So with that being said, Lewis and FIA, there had been a lot of jittering when up and down about Lewis, Hamilton, Susie Wolf and FIA. That takes me first to the Susie Wolf case. When the issue came up in December, about the compliance issue came up in December, and Susie Wolf and her husband were not having it. The whole Mercedes AMG team were not having it. Susie Wolf wrote back, and a few days later FIA came up with, oh, it was a mistake, it's not like that, this and that. And it was funny because they said it was a mistake, they've looked into it, but looking into it has not been transparent until the case of Chris Horner came up, and the lady in question, like we've always called her, when the case came up, there was no way people could know what is really going on. We cannot say there's integrity in FIA or the FIA are really telling us the truth. She filed a case against FIA based on the compliance issue that we need transparency, and our integrity is being questioned to the whole world. Now we need to know what they saw and how they went about it. And Lewis Hamilton backed her up on that, in which I will back her up, because you cannot criticize somebody's integrity like what is happening to Chris Horner. Like I said, Chris Horner believes his integrity is being criticized or is being trampled upon. He should take it to court. And Lewis Hamilton was asked if he's had backing from the FIA, and he said it. FIA has never backed him, which shows FIA's bias in some few things. And I think FIA should live up to expectation, and they should do what is right. And they have a lot to do to the drivers, to the teams, and also to the fans, because if they're not doing their job, going to be a whole mess and shitty business. And that takes us to Chris Horner. Chris Horner's case is still on, and I believe Chris Horner's wife, Geri Halliwell, had been online not to criticize but to be firm with her husband, and everything she's saying is she wants to be seeing Chris Horner's texts, messages, WhatsApp messages and text messages, what is going on his phone, and also that the lady in question should be sacked. Though Red Bull had dismissed the lady and she had filed for a redress on the case, she has also filed a case with FIA, and that we are waiting for on what will happen. But it shows that there are still a lot of things to be done, and there are still a lot of things that are missing in this whole case. And with FIA transparency and people's integrity being questioned, there's still a lot of things that we can do, and there's still a lot of things being missed. So that is that. Now let me go to the race today. Lewis Hamilton from beginning of the weekend has been like, the car is a very good car. That's a W15, and we've seen him come off and come on the car, and it shows how terrible the car can be when the car is not working. And Lewis Hamilton is already getting tired of Mercedes. He's looking like somebody that is ready to pay Carlos Sainz off so I can get into the seat. But a lot of people would look at the downturn of his career recently with Mercedes, and they won't understand that it has been a very terrific car that Mercedes have produced in the last 3 years. And this car, especially W15, is worse. So a lot of people have questioned his drive, on how he's driving that Mercedes, and people don't understand. I said it in one of my podcasts, in which I called what Mercedes needs to do. Mercedes have failed since 2022 in the car they have been bringing. If you look at the bite Lewis Hamilton had, you would know that he wants to help the team to succeed, but I think their failure had gotten really into their head, and they are unable to replicate their past success. And I think that is biting on Mercedes team, and that is really bringing down their performance. What do I mean by that? Now, if you look at the Mercedes team from 2014 till 2021, they were a team of class. They were out there doing great things, winning competitions, giving it to everybody. They were not winning like 20 races in a season or 21 races, but they were doing races like, the way it's meant to be. Other teams will win. It was more competitive. But since with these new regulations, I believe they've not gotten it. And the new car they've brought now, they need to understand the car. They thought they understood the car, and it's still worse. From what we are looking at, this car is even worse than the last two cars they brought. It's not that the car is not fast. The problem is they've just brought a real car that they are meant to bring. Now they are meant to understand the car, the ground effect, a lot of things they are meant to understand. Now, Lewis Hamilton is in the bite of it. Why? And how? Remember 2022, when the new regulations came up, he told them that this will not work, and they still brought it. What did he do? He used his own car and himself were the lab rat that they were using to experiment, to change the setup, to do everything. But last year, he didn't agree for them to do that. He had a good season. Yeah, everybody knew he had a good season, even with a bad car. But this year, because it is last year with Mercedes, he's trying to give them a good setup, set the car up for a good competition in 2025, and possibly set them up for 2026 regulations. The regulations coming up in 2026 are majorly engine regulations. There will still be ground effect cars, but engine regulations, which means to be about 50% of hybrid. I'll still do a video on that. Some things will change. I think MGUH is going, KERS is staying, but it becomes bigger because they are going to incorporate MGUH into the KERS. A lot of things are going to change. Now, Lewis still has the bite, but his car is being used as the lab rat, which is affecting his race, and people don't tend to see it. They are thinking, no, he's done. His age does not know how to win. No, when you keep losing and you keep falling out of the place you believe you are meant to be, you are going to get tired, and that was what happened to him in Australia. He's so tired of the team, tired of the whole process. Even if I leave my car for you to test, you guys should be able to protect me, in which his teammate is not been protecting him. Yeah, his teammate is not been protecting him. George Russell will go out there and say, oh, the car is fine, the car is balanced with me, but this guy's career is on the edge. George Russell is not looking at that. Toto Wolff will come and say, oh yeah, we are changing some setup on Lewis Hamilton's car to see where we are going to, but on George's car is better. You can't leave his teammate to be beating him while his teammate is protecting himself and he is not being protected. I think all these things are speaking a lot about what is going on in Mercedes. They're not protecting him. They're not telling us the truth, because whatever he says, it is his own words against himself. Even if Toto Wolff comes out, yeah, they are friends, it is still against him. After Jeddah, James Allison and the other technical officer made comments and they never protected Lewis. Yeah, they didn't protect him. So a lot of people will think, oh, Lewis is in his prime. Why should Ferrari have signed Lewis and let Carlos Sainz go? We all know that Lewis is still the best driver in F1. Yeah, some people might not like it. For now, Max Verstappen is driving the hell out of his life. That guy is doing a perfect job. He's doing a great job for Red Bull and he's doing a great job for his team. He has the best car. He has a good car in which a lot of team principles are like, if my drivers have the same driving style and they are put in the same car, they will do the same job. And you guys should remember that each driver has his own driving style and they have the way they understand the car. So I won't blame Lewis. And let me take you to what happened in the race. Why would they start him on soft tires? He made a complaint on the grid that, guys, this tire, we should not have started on it. They made a decision in the briefing that they will start on soft tire and this is how the race will go, because they believe if they start on soft tire, he can claim some positions in the first 2-3 laps, then maintain. But the track temperature, he could feel it on the tire that the track temperature is higher and will make the tire degrade. Now remember, the tires they used last year were C4 in this same race for soft tire, but now it is C5. Now the C5 this year is softer than the normal one they used last year. Now you need to understand, the soft tire that was C4 in Jeddah is now medium tire. Now if you look at the whole race from Friday, we all saw the way drivers were struggling with tires. All the drivers were struggling because the tires were graining. But Ferrari had a better graining. The Ferrari car had a better tire management. Yeah, because those were the things they suffered last year, race and tire degradation. But now they've come up with a better solution that is making their tire last longer. So you give it to the Ferrari, but to the Mercedes, you take it away from them because they have failed themselves. So coming with soft tire, he was able to gain one place and the tire fell off totally. So if he had finished the race, he will still finish around where he started, maybe around P8 or P9. But he can't fight the guys ahead because he was the second person to change his tires. And I've never seen a Mercedes engine just shut off. This is my first time of seeing Mercedes engine. Since they came back in 2010, the engine will just shut off, boom, on the driver. And I think Mercedes need to do a due diligence to look into what is going on, what went wrong with that engine. But for the bite, I think Lewis Hamilton still have it. But the car is having, and the drive he is having now for the team has waned. He's not really feeling himself in that team again. Now, if you look at it, he should feel like, yes, he wants to drive, he wants to, but every time he gets into the car behavior changes almost at every practice. Coming to qualifying, he cannot get the car. Immediately after he changed his tire, chasing after Lance Stroll, what happened to him? He ran into the gravel because he's losing the rear end of the car. The car went into park for me after FP3. So the setup that has been on the car is still the same. So he's losing the rear end of the car. He cannot really get himself driving the car the way he wants to drive the car. So we can't blame Lewis Hamilton. For me, I think it is simply what the car is giving him that he's doing. And to Mercedes, I think Mercedes still have a lot of things to do. I've analyzed it, what they need to do in my video, and what Mercedes needs to do on the W15 for them to in the championship. But I think the championship is already gone. But one thing they need to do, we can see the flaw they brought from testing that is working. That flaw is working. But because the flaw is working now, they need to make the flaw work better because they are still having issues. Look at the control Ferrari is having. The Ferrari has improved. They are really having that car hugging the ground the way it's meant to hug the ground, which is as a result of the flaw of the car. So Mercedes need to look into that flaw and do a better job on the floor. Then on their rear, they need to do a better job on the rear because they are losing it on the rear. Even George Russell himself is complaining, but they have not done a lot of tweaks on George Russell's car like they did on Lewis Hamilton's car. So I think Mercedes needs to get themselves right. The whole team is in shambles. They need to get themselves right because I won't blame Lewis Hamilton for leaving again. He had not left. What does 2026 bring for him? If the whole team is in disarray at this point in time, what does 2026 have in stock for him? It means 2026 will be worse for him. So I think it is all Mercedes doing, whatever they are going through. And if they end this season badly, let me be sincere with you, any Formula 1 driver coming to them will be afraid, including Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz might decide to sign for Red Bull than signing for Mercedes. They will be afraid of driving for Mercedes. Though it's a big team, but they will be afraid of driving for Mercedes because they're a top 5 team and they're looking like a 5th position this season. To George Russell drove beautifully today, but I'll still blame him a little for what happened to him on the last lap. You are driving against a very experienced driver in Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso knew what he was doing. He knew he wanted to recharge and also he wanted to brake testing because the only way you recharge your battery is when you are braking in F1. Towards that corner, normally he was not braking. So he braked twice. George Russell was running quite close to him. He should be able to know that when he gets into the dirty wind on corner, there is nowhere to go. But because he wants to gain position, he was not calculating. Meanwhile, the person ahead of him was calculating that, okay, this is what will happen. But he was not calculating in the sense that this guy will slow down when he sees him, like he did to Lewis Hamilton in Abu Dhabi 2023. He did the same thing, but Lewis Hamilton was experienced enough to slow down, so he does not run into him, then he moved. He should understand that, but because of his inexperience, he does not understand what he should do. Of all, Fernando Alonso got a 20 seconds, 3 penalty points, but he still got some few points out of the race. Meanwhile, George Russell nearly lost his life and he didn't get any point out of the race. So I think George Russell needs to look at this. George Russell let himself down because of his inexperience. And if you look at all the races Carlos Sainz had won, 2022 Carlos Sainz won in Silverstone. George Russell crashed out on the first lap. In 2023, when Carlos Sainz won in Singapore, George Russell crashed out last lap. 2024, Carlos Sainz won in Australia. George Russell crashed out last lap. Now, he needs to look at himself, and all these crashes are of his own doing. And this is 3 years in a row. He should have learned, and I believe he can do better. If you look at it, it was due to his own inexperience. Now, let me go to Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso did a great job. Now, he needed to protect himself, but he was not calculating the inexperience of George Russell to want to run into him or run into an accident or get too much close into the dirty air and lose his front to understeer. That was what happened. He was trying to defend, harvest energy while also defending. What would he do? He's an intelligent person, but to me, I don't think he deserves the penalty, but he had to be given the penalty. The only reason he was given was because it was risky and it nearly took George Russell's life. It was so dangerous because when he fell back to the main road, if there had been a car on high speed run, it would just drive into him straight. Because we all saw George Russell shouting, red flag is in the middle of the road. So, but I believe they both could have done better, but George Russell for me is to be blamed. Now, Perez penalty. Perez impeded Hulkenberg during the FP3. He impeded him. Now, during the race, how did Perez perform? He had a floor damage. He could have chased down the Ferrari, but he was not even able to chase down the McLaren. Now, if you look at the race, the Ferrari for me, on race pace, they were better and faster than the Red Bull. There was no way, even if Max Verstappen was in that race, there was no way Max Verstappen would have won the race. Max Verstappen could have come second or third in the race if he was fully in the race. There was no way he could win the race. I'm telling you, because the race pace was there for the Ferrari. So one way or the other, they would have gotten ahead of him, either strategically or pure race performance. They would have gotten ahead of him. Now, that being said, Perez is a recovery race driver, but through the race, the floor damage didn't aid him to get close to the McLaren. But chasing the Ferraris down, I don't see any light in it. Him being unable to chase the McLarens down was because of his fight with Fernando Alonso and George Russell. And during those fights, he grained his tire, he lost tire performances. So he was unable to get close. So aside from that, when you are fighting somebody that has nothing to lose, like George Russell or Fernando Alonso, you are losing tire. It was not tactical about the battle to know how to save his tire, went to attack. He was attacking aggressively and he kept on losing tire performance and his tire life went out. That was why. And also, they had to be tweaking his front wings every time he got into the pit lane because they didn't want the same thing that happened to Max Verstappen to happen to him. The upwash of the 30th ahead of him flowing into the brake at the rear. That also were the things they were preventing from happening to Sergio Perez. That is for Sergio Perez. Alonso penalty, like I said, for me, it was not deserving, but he got the penalty. Toto Wolff has said he deserved to be blamed for everything. Yes, he deserved to be blamed because he's the team principal. He needs to tell his team what they should do, how they should do it. And when they give him a car and it's not working, he needs to make sure they get the car right. Let me give you an example. In 2023, when the McLaren brought their MCL 60 and it was not working, the team principal said, we can see that this car is not working. Right from the testing, we are going to work on a better car. And by the middle of the season, they came up with a better car. That was the only car challenging the Red Bull. Though they were not close to the Red Bull, that was the only car challenging the Red Bull from middle of the season to the end. Now, I think Toto Wolff needs to first admit to himself that this car is a total failure. This car they've brought is a total disaster. They need to change the car. They need to get a better car to race because this car is a total disaster. That being said, Toto Wolff needs to task his engineer and give them ultimatum. Those that need to go, need to go. Those that need to stay will stay. By so time, you guys need to bring upgrades that will bring performance to this car. When you are looking at a team like Red Bull that copied your design, everything, the engine cover, the podless, the upwash, the downwash, doing better than you need to go back to the drawing board and say, guys, we failed. Let us do something better. So I think Toto Wolff should blame himself and he should also own it up to him not being able to lead that team alright at this turbulent time. He's failing. He's a good team boss, but he's failing at this particular point in time. To Red Bull, let me talk about Max Verstappen first. To Max Verstappen, he had a beautiful qualifying. Now, this race did not come to him. He would have finished the race third or second, no doubt. That's how he would have finished the race. But the tires, I think, one, if you look at the Australian Grand Prix, it shows that the Red Bull were under pressure. They nearly got under pressure in Bahrain, but the Ferrari could not put them under real pressure. So it was a seamless win for Red Bull. But this time, Fred Vasseur said that he's going to make sure he tries to put them under pressure. Now, they've put Red Bull under pressure for the first time this season, and they have broken. One, they knew they had brake issues. They might have been nursing this for a long time or before the race. But they believe that if they're in the clean air in the front, that would not have happened. Yes, it would not have happened. It would be in clean air. It would not be in the dirty air of any driver. So, whatever he's doing, he will be able to save the tires. Unfortunately, immediately Carlos Sainz got ahead of him. He got into the dirty air of Carlos Sainz and the tire went ablaze because the brake disc and the brake pad were overheating. So he lost the tire. I believe they need to do something about it because if he had not lost the tire, he will still lose performance on the tire. Immediately, Carlos Sainz got ahead of him. He will lose performance due to himself staying behind Carlos Sainz. Tire will grain out and he will lose performance. So all these excuses that he can still run closer to him, there's no way we'll run close to him. He will lose performance on the tire and the brake will overheat. He will have to step back like 2 seconds in the race, and that would give him into the hands of Charles Leclerc. So I think there's no excuse there. Red Bull needs to do a better job. But if they get under the same pressure, it shows this season is a battle between Red Bull and Ferrari, 100%. Now, to the whole team, I think the whole team need to own up that there are some things they've not been doing well, and they need to look at it now. They had a lot of understeer during the practices and the qualifying. They had understeer. In qualifying, they had oversteer. In the race, they had oversteer. So they need to look at all these things. All these things are based on 2 things: aerodynamics, and they need to look at this. The rear, it means the suspension on the rear. They need to look at all these things and sort them in less than 12 days coming to Japan. So that is on to Red Bull, what they need to do to make sure they are back into this competition. Because if Red Bull don't do this, Red Bull will be out of this competition in no time. Now to Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz did a beautiful job. A man coming from appendicitis operation, incision, coming to win a race. What a true goated story. I feel for him because he's a man that is trying to prove doubters wrong that he deserves a seat, and I think he will get a seat. He deserves a seat next year. He's been doing everything to prove everybody wrong, that he was wrongfully not acknowledged in McLaren because he was not their major driver. So he moved to Ferrari and he feels that he should be the leading driver. He should be respected. Now, Lewis Hamilton being signed because of his experience and what he brings to the table, he feels that he was wrongfully not resigned. So he feels like he has a lot to prove. He needs to tell Ferrari that they failed him. Now he's driving a drive of his life to secure his seat, one, to make sure he gets himself in the right spot, in the right position, to make everybody feel like this is Carlos Sainz. He can do what Max Verstappen could have done, but Red Bull never gave him a chance. Now, coming from that pain, driving against the best team in F1 presently and the best driver in F1 presently. That is massive. That is a win to me. It is a 100/10 for him. A great drive, a wonderful drive, wonderful delivery, and kudos to Carlos Sainz. I can't say anything more. Nothing to blame, nothing to say. From qualifying to the main Grand Prix, Carlos Sainz was exceptional. To Charles Leclerc, his teammate, he was exceptional. During the qualifying, he made a lot of mistakes. In the first stint of the race, he was not into the race, but the second and third stint, he was really into the race and he got himself some decent points. Second in the race, which is massive for Ferrari. A good 1-2 finish for Ferrari. There's no way McLaren could have gotten close to Ferrari. When Lando Norris was getting closer in the last stint of the race, it was because Charles Leclerc was trying to preserve his tire. And if you look at it at the end of the race, he was able to preserve his tire while Lando Norris lost his tire life. And if Lando Norris had been under pressure from maybe a team like Mercedes or Red Bull like that, not his teammate, he would have lost the race. So I think it was a beautiful drive, a good weekend for Ferrari, Fred Vasseur, Charles Leclerc, and ultimately Carlos Sainz. Oscar Piastri drove a beautiful race from qualifying to the end of the GP. He made himself proud. He did his hometown proud. But his hometown hero, Daniel Ricciardo, has been struggling in the VCAB 1 since Bahrain. And I think he needs to prove himself because Yuki Tsunoda is proving himself in that same car. I think he needs to prove himself. He needs to show people that he deserves to be in the Red Bull or still remain in the VCAB. And if he cannot prove himself this season, his career is over. Liam Lawson is in the waiting. Alex Albon could be brought back in 2026. So his career could be over because teams are looking for the best drivers to pair, not an on-and-off driver to pair. So I think Daniel Ricciardo needs to do a lot of good job. Yuki Tsunoda is doing a good job. But I don't see Yuki Tsunoda getting into the Red Bull team because I don't just see him. Because the politics in Red Bull will not put him in that seat. I don't want to say much, but I know the politics in Red Bull will not put Yuki Tsunoda in that seat. 100%. So Yuki Tsunoda still needs to keep driving for that team or get into another team like Aston Martin when Honda are coming back into F1 in 2026 with Aston Martin. So those are the places he could get a seat and find himself driving vehemently. Alex Albon getting into his teammates' car, changing the engine. He did what he could do. He did the best performance that car could bring out for him. And he came 11th. He nearly got the point. He came 11th, which is good for the team because the two Mercedes out and one Red Bull, I believe it could have gotten into maybe 10 or 9, but possibly that is. But looking at this, he was racing against the As that now has a very good racing car, unlike the one they had last year. So for me, it's a good job for Alex Albon. But to Nico Hülkenberg and Kevin Magnussen, they did a wonderful job for their team today, getting the two cars getting into the points. What a drive! What a success! And their former team principal Gunther Steiner was the interviewer today. That is a win for us, a win-win for us. Us all along today, two drivers in points, great teamwork, former team principal interviewing. What a win for us. I think it's just wonderful for us. And let me give you this. Lando Norris is still the only driver to have 14 podiums without a win in F1. He can do better, and I believe McLaren could still win some races this season. That car has potential in it to win races this season. To Alpine, well, they said they are bringing upgrades, but I don't see the upgrades they are bringing anytime soon to compete against the top 5. I think the only team they can compete against is from 6th to 8th, and I hope they'll be able to do that. But for now, Alpine is a woeful team. To Stake team, the cross-tread issue still lingers on, and they had 3 stops with this same issue. What are they doing to correct this? From beginning of the season in Bahrain, we already know they're having this issue. What is Stake team doing? They are not running their own races in milliseconds. They are running their own race in minutes, which is woeful for the whole team. And I think that team can do better. But like I said, it was a wonderful race, and it still shows that Ferrari from this race, they are still ahead in analysis. From the data we have, they are still far ahead of the Red Bull on race pace, and on qualifying pace, they are on par with Red Bull. The only mistake Ferrari is making right now is trying to push themselves or push the car to the limit. And I think if they have a more confident driver, or the drivers can gain more confidence in themselves, they should be able to push that car, qualify alongside with Red Bull, and push the Red Bull to tell them that they are as good and they are as wonderful as Red Bull. And to Carlos Sainz, aside from giving a great driver, I still believe that they can have good wins this season and they can still challenge for position, and there are still opportunities for them to win races and to challenge Red Bull. The Ferrari team are going to do a good job. To Red Bull, they need to go back and look at the things they've done wrong. They've been a championship winning team. The little things they've done wrong, from the data, this weekend was not their weekend. It was just a whole Ferrari weekend. weekend, and we can see a lot of improvements from McLaren. McLaren were on race pace par with Red Bull, and they did a good job. Aston Martin too did a good job. They were outstanding all through the weekend. They did a good job. The two drivers getting into points, which is massive. Lance Stroll drove his heart out. Fernando Alonso getting the penalty and still being in the point. What a drive for them. To Haas team looks like the 5th best team presently in Formula 1. Mercedes out. Haas are the 5th best team in Formula 1. Mercedes are looking like the 6th best team. And if Haas can keep up this performance, they could come 5th or 6th in the championship. They can go ahead of Alpine and Stake and possibly Williams from what we're looking at. But they are looking good. Alpha Tauri VCAB. Yuki Tsunoda, great drive. Their race pace is very close to the Aston Martin. That's a VCAB. With Yuki Tsunoda is very close to the Aston Martin. They are doing a good job. Yuki Tsunoda is doing a good job for the team. And up onto the next one, we give you better analysis, clean analysis after the race in Japan. I love you guys. Bye.